Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us today to talk about eliminating your automation nightmares. Throughout the webinar, feel free to drop any questions you have or share your struggles and experiences in the chat. We'll either respond directly in the chat or we will save it for the Q&A portion at the end of this presentation. No need to take notes. You'll be able to access the session recording through ScaleHub's LinkedIn profile or YouTube channel. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. Suzanne is ScaleHub's VP of Sales for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Based in Germany, Suzanne brings ScaleHub's unique combination of human and artificial intelligence to BPOs and shared service centers throughout the EMEA region. In the US, we have Peter, VP of Sales for the Americas. Peter is hard at work onboarding BPOs and shared service centers to ScaleHub's crowdsourcing portal. Today, Suzanne and Peter will explain the concept of collective intelligence and show how it takes enterprise automation further than any solution has been able to thus far. So let's get started. Susanna, the floor is yours.
Susanna, you're muted.
Oh, it's a good start, right? Thanks. Thank you very much. Let's start again. So the next 49 minutes, I said 50 before or so, Peter and I are going to present to you today how collective intelligence in the context of automating document and data-driven processes can eliminate some barriers and relieve some fears. So we're looking at those barriers and fears. We're looking at the role and the benefits of the collective intelligence and what is it. And we try to bring as many as we can our personal examples and experiences into the conversation today. So let's start a little bit about what are the hopes and promises that automation can bring to organizations. So the recent events have driven many organizations to speed up their automation efforts. And automation is in everybody's mind, especially given the fact that AI, for example, artificial intelligence, is increasing constantly. So the one thing that can help, or what organizations are hoping for, can you go one more, Annie? I'm already on the third one. Thank you very much. Sorry for messing things up here. So efficiency gains is one of the areas that people are expecting from automation. Why would you do it otherwise? And especially maybe to counteract staff shortages, which are ever present nowadays. And of course, the hope of lowering operating costs, increasing margins, but even more and more, the customer centricity improvements that being the hope of being achieved with automation are in the forefront of thinking. And these promises are there to actually drive organizations to adopt automation technologies and solutions. But what are the potential barriers and fears that come with that? One of those fears would be delays in the project itself. So how can the project be impacting the service level agreements? How can it be delayed by maybe having insufficient legacy systems, having also potentially some older and insufficient processes. So this all is going to be something that is going to put a fear into people and helping also not help by then having a delay impacting customer experience thereafter.
Yeah, and next we talk about one of the fears being non-compliancy. It's probably one of the most pressing fears of the day. So think about if you have potential data leaks, security breaches, which are happening within an automated process. This is going to bring any automation transformation project to a complete standstill. So think about any hint of a data leak, or if new chaos is added and control is lost, or if there's a transparency required for customers or decision makers and it's not there for them to understand and make decisions based off of, an automation project will most certainly be shut down for fears of reputational harm or maybe taking a hit to customer retention overall. So, sensitive documents becoming untraceable in a process flow, or for example, having the customer's personal data lost or leaked, anything like that, or inaccurate data being pumped into a process or into automation steps this can cause great havoc downstream. And so this is where collective intelligence, the concepts we're going to talk about today, can come to the aid to ensure compliance.
One of the biggest hopes is cost reduction or margin improvement, but it's also one of the biggest fears that cost can explode. And unfortunately, it's a fear that in some projects can come true because the time to ROI is longer than expected. There is maybe something unaccounted for in the inputs. It's not commercially viable for certain inputs to be automated. There is an interaction with legacy systems which cannot be automated overall. So something that is really a fear that is quite real, and we are also going to show you how improving or in speeding up the way to ROI can be helped by collective intelligence. So before we dive into the details, let me just briefly allow me to introduce ScaleHub, who we represent, and why we talk about this topic, and also the concept of collective intelligence. So ScaleHub is a German organization, the German headquartered organization, with global presence. We were founded in 2016, and we've done our homework since in the area of collective intelligence. All of us working at ScaleHub come from a history of working on high volume, complex automation solutions, either on the BPO side, being a service provider, being in shared service centers, or being on a technology vendor side. And we have been trying, we set out in 2016 to help our customers to bridge the automation gaps and to help them to fulfill their desire for really streamlined automated processes. I'm not going to bore you about ISO and everything else. We're going to cover some compliance topics and regulations later on, but just be assured that we have done our homework so that we can talk about some of the examples today that we have been working on and with our customers to solve their automation nightmares. And let me talk about what is collective intelligence and start with the Gartner view. So Gartner calls it human-in-the-loop crowdsourcing. And you see here a hype cycle for business process services. So that's the most relevant one for shared service centers and BPO processes. And it's the latest version still. And in 2020, you see it's something that is in an early innovation trigger stage and is something that Gartner predicts has a major role to play in business process optimization management in the next 5 to 10 years to come. So very well. So Gartner says it's important, but what is it really? So let's have a look at what is it and what's so different about it. The word collective already implies it's a pooling of something. So the first thing it pools together or brings together is artificial and human intelligence. So artificial intelligence is being applied in the collective intelligence solution space to maximize the benefits and bridging gaps where mainstream process automation may leave gaps that are still remaining to really fill those little gaps, but then bring in the human intelligence to bridge the gaps that are left behind it. So really to validate what cannot be automated or what maybe was wrongly interpreted by the automation technology. And the human intelligence is being brought in the form of crowdsourcing. And let's look at why crowdsourcing is so different as an approach. At ScaleHub, and as we use that example, we are having access to 2.3 million crowd workers worldwide. They are organized in different crowds. We talk about that a little bit later on. And this gives us the opportunity to support our customers really on a very agile way. So we can scale up, we can scale down whenever there's a requirement for our customers to have our need. So we can actually ensure that we bridge the gaps and we guarantee quality and time for our customers doing so. And as you can imagine, with the power of 2.3 million people worldwide comes a great power of actually helping business processes out there, independent of geography and on industry sector. And let's have a really high-level look at how does it work and how does it fit into our customer processes. Collective intelligence solutions are not usually a greenfield solution, so they do not replace what is already there, what customers have in place or BPOs have in place. So they have their own automation technology, they're working on constantly improving it, but it actually comes to help towards bridging the gaps or helping to speed up the processes behind it. So we are taking in to the portal, the platform, any kind of input from our customers, which could be the exceptions, for example. We are using AI to prepare that, to be presented to our crowd workers to then do verification, validation, classification of that data before we consolidate it and bring it back to our customer systems so they can carry on with their process. This could also be training, for example, their AI to have their own automation technology platform being, first of all, efficient overall. So this is really something that is a very high level view of how it works. We're going to go deeper now, and we're going to start with a simple topic of relieving barriers and fears with the topic of collective intelligence, and that is how can we achieve rapid ROI, Peter, right? Simple topic.
Yeah, simple, Susanna. Thank you. So, yeah, the fear of not achieving value and rapid ROI is top of mind, every time you're doing a project like this. In fact, the study we have up here, published by Economist Impact, about 50% of respondents said they are not achieving significant value from existing tech investments. So why is this the case when there's so much promise with automation? We've seen this promise for years and years now, and why does this continue happening? So the pressure to identify new automation opportunities and achieve a rapid ROI is always fed by good intentions, of course, but the reality of designing the solution, deploying it quickly, leading the needed organizational change management, and then at the same time maintaining data privacy and keeping top-notch customer experience as main priorities can be a very difficult balancing act. If anything falls apart in this value chain, which is super common, we've seen that a lot, there's going to be reduced value and ROI will evaporate really quickly. So with this as a backdrop and something to think about, any new additional investments in automation technologies will bring significant scrutiny from leaders and colleagues in your organization. So how can collective intelligence help? What we're going to do today is look at some of the fears that are built in and the nightmares that follow to highlight how collective intelligence can provide relief to achieve rapid return on investment. So the fear number one that we have is lackluster ROI and the nightmares that come from this fear. The first nightmare is an automation gap. When exceptions occur or there's downtimes, but the show must always go on, customers must be taken care of, internal processes must be finished. What do? Collective intelligence responds by saying ramp up and just as easily ramp down at scale with ready to go skilled workers in the crowd with guaranteed quality levels. So next nightmare would be preparation of AI training data. You must do that. It happens a lot these days when you're training your AI models, and this is a tough one because it can take a lot of time to train AI. So how do we do it more quickly and within defined time periods so that you feel safe and comfortable within your planning? What we know and what we've learned over the course of years at Scale Hub is the average time to prepare training data sets for AI is approximately 8 months, so pretty long. And we see that this amount of time can lag. And if it does lag, it eats into project costs. So what can you do to speed this up and be more efficient? Collective intelligence can solve this large-scale AI training data task in short order, let's say days, maybe weeks, owing to the scale of what Susanna mentioned, which is the 2.3 million crowd workers who are available 24/7, so all the time. Nightmare number 3, unknown or exploding costs. When you have an uneven or poorly defined cost input for automation projects, or really any projects, but today we're talking about automation projects, creating ROI can be very tough. So how do you improve planning to achieve a good business case? Collective intelligence, luckily, is 100% transactional. So by definition, you always know what costs you're going to use, and there's no surprises in that way. Finally, nightmare number 4 is change requirements in live operations. This is a tough one again. So how do you deal with things on the fly? How do you changes that come up on the fly? How do you manage that? Can you handle it? If not, new requirements can balloon costs and entire projects can be at risk if not done correctly. So collective intelligence allows for immediate support to cover expectations and easy implement new requirements during live operations while you're working. So you can feel confident in, for example, adding new doc types or additional fields, data fields that you want entry to, and you can send these out to new as new and updated micro tasks to the crowd, and they can handle it right away. So in summary, collective intelligence can provide relief for all these nightmares. You can feel really comfortable on boosting your ROI results using collective intelligence. So now you're working to boost your ROI. How can you continue to focus and meet your SLAs is the next question.
I think it comes as no surprise that automation is something that organizations are using to support optimization efforts. So the hope is always there to ensure SLAs such as time, quality, and of course, increasing customer satisfaction while doing so is at the forefront of thinking and should be at the forefront of thinking. And certainly recent advantages in especially AI technologies have put spotlights on the solutions that can make this possible. But there's also things that could go wrong. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about how then collective intelligence can help with those to actually help organizations to ensure it doesn't go wrong. So the one fear that senior management especially has is disruption. So when you introduce something new, a new way of working, disruption can occur and business continuity is there in danger. And of course, disruption whenever a process thereafter goes wrong is even worse in the sense of in a live scenario. And when you think about an automated process being disrupted, the consequences are multiplied to the way maybe it was working before. And this is something where collective intelligence can provide relief. So it is really something that can be part of a business continuity solution because it is something that can be brought in on demand in a very agile way, 24/7, to actually relieve the pressure on a process to bring that real business continuity. While it also relieves the fear of disruption, it can also relieve the fear of decreased quality, which is, of course, one of the SLAs that are most in focus. And why can quality be decreased? Because not every automation technology or automation technology in general does not deliver 100% all the time. There will be gaps. There will be gaps because maybe a document type is not recognized. There will be gaps because your system does not recognize handwriting. There's very poor input code coming in. Suddenly a document has changed. There's an unknown input arriving, and the system needs to be adapted to that. So again, collective intelligence is there to actually cover those gaps. So while it's doing that in a managed service approach, you bring in resources in a crowd working environment to help cover those gaps. So it's a seamless experience for your customers and for your process owners in the background. It also provides the clean data that's then maybe required by your system to learn again, which is true also for exceptions. Same concept applies. So exceptions can cost a lot of money to fix. They need resources. Those resources may not be there because they're required for any other more value creating tasks. So again, it's a transactional support of relieving those exception handling tasks as well. It can be something that we can done with collective intelligence. And of course, there's resourcing. So collective intelligence is providing instant scalability up and down, but resourcing is a really big topic that requires a bit more diving into, Peter, right?
Great. So, this day and age, businesses, of course, face many challenges, many of which have been exacerbated in the past couple of years by the pandemic. So within this mix of major challenges, we see the global talent shortage, which, previously maybe seemed controllable before the pandemic, but is now touching, I would say, most, if not all, the sectors, as well as, all the countries in the world. So we have these two sources up here. Manpower Group stated that 69% of organizations are struggling to fill positions. And according to ADA, talent shortage is a barrier for significant adoption of emerging technologies. With these as sort of the backdrop, a lack of reliable and consistent talent, there can be major impacts on adoption of emerging technologies, obviously, and this includes, in our world, document and data processing solutions, along with business process automation tools. So this can become within this environment of talent shortages, there's ever stricter service level demands, and these must be met while still maintaining highly accurate and efficient process levels, of course. So for IT leaders and operations leaders, this could become a very difficult balancing act. So what can happen as a result of this balancing act, and as the balance tilts more towards meeting SLAs and high quality, it can lead away from distraction, or it can create distraction away from the overall customer experience and can negatively affect customer retention rates. In addition, a lack of flexibility starts to become the norm when tackling changing business requirements, which can then expand the problem even more. As we see the cost for reliable workers continue to jump globally higher and higher, of course, automation, as we all know, can be a way to counteract and help your staff and create more efficiency. But as much as automation technologies improve, 100% automation or 100% quality is still out of reach for most of the use cases we see. We've seen AI in recent years, and especially machine learning approaches, become paradigm changes for data and document processing. But we all know training machine learning requires a great number of staff. And once again, the talent war issues hit organizations head on. This leads to the third fear. So we're not going to go back and forth on this one because it's more summarized, but the nightmare of insufficient resources when you need them most. How does collective intelligence address this and provide relief? With collective intelligence, you don't need to upskill your workforce anymore. You have immediate access to 24/7 talent pool. And we amazingly can activate 1,000 workers within 10 minutes at any time of the day. It's amazing. The work the crowd can do can be tailored for any use case, from fundamental data entry tasks to more specified document processing tasks that can be directed at workers with relevant specialized experience or certifications. What's really amazing is that the AI involved in our crowd management tools allow us to select the right set of skilled workers, so specialist workers. So for example, we take criteria such as sector knowledge, language knowledge, experience base, and can also put in the mix geographic locations to put the right worker for the task at hand. With collective intelligence at your side, then you can accept any workload, any additional workload. So you're not, rejecting any types of jobs anymore based on workload and skill sets, because this new availability of skilled workers is at your fingertips. This then can free up your own staff to focus on more value-added tasks, such as great customer experience or critical business tasks that feed strategic decision-making. What if you have uneven volumes that are hard to plan for, and massive fluctuations of documents day over day? So it changes day by day. How do you make sure all the documents are processed accurately with no impact to data privacy and are delivered to the customer on time? Collective intelligence also has a response to this by supporting any document volume you feed it. And often, the larger the volumes the crowd is fed, the quicker it responds. With this in mind, there's no concern about processing a few hundred pages one day and a million pages the next. Keep all this in mind, that this can be achieved by collective intelligence without any concern of building up or managing your own technology infrastructure. It's a managed service ready to accept new work at any time. So I just mentioned earlier adding 1,000 workers to a job in 10 minutes. The amazing thing is that collective intelligence and crowdsourcing allows for tackling volatile volumes. So as fast as the crowd workers come, they also drop away as volumes vanish. Collective intelligence and crowdsourcing's unique agility with document and data processing takes away the worries about volume fluctuations totally. And we have an example of this with one of our healthcare customers. We help this specialist service provider process prescriptions and nursing-related documentation. So SLAs for this kind of task are very tight and result in huge financial risk if they're missed for their customer. Their own systems already deliver a fantastic 99% automation rate for prescription documents, but the volatile nature of volumes fluctuations means that they still may need even hundreds of workers to tackle the automation gap for the exceptions. In this last month, this customer faced one day with 500 prescriptions that could not be automatically processed, and then the very next day there were 1.8 million prescriptions that could not be automatically processed. And everything was still needed for completion within a few working hours and at high qualities. So using the collective intelligence approach, this kind of fluctuation is tackled without planning or extensive communication. Crowdsourcing scales up and down to these kind of fluctuations automatically once it is set up. This is the flexibility that cannot be achieved with any other automation or outsourcing model. A second example is from the census forms in an EU member country. This use case has high volumes of 50 million pages annually. All the forms are in various EU languages, include special characters, etc. But interesting here is the requirement demands that all forms must be processed in the EU only. So how do we manage this? How does Collective Intelligence manage this requirement? Collective Intelligence can limit the public crowd to the EU region only, so it's geographic specific. Added into the mix here on top of the public crowd processors is another private crowd of specialist reviewers who complete QA as well. With Collective Intelligence, therefore, you can balance the load and make sure the tasks you have are directed at the correct crowd, all while ensuring quality, speed, and consistent pricing. So I want to touch on one more example here of additional sourcing models, which is becoming more and more relevant today. It's called impact sourcing. This is when companies are asking that a certain percentage of the crowd workers be sourced in emerging markets, for example, or specially designated economic development zones. We can also cover this. Crowdsourcing approach makes this possible. So these new journeys in outsourcing, and we can provide a secure and highly efficient interface between clients and impact source workers when they ask for it and when they need it. So next, we're going to talk about security and data privacy and some of the standards that must be adhered to and how Collective Intelligence ensures compliance. Susanna?
Yeah, you heard Peter talking about some examples there where you can imagine data protection is quite critical. Healthcare, public sector, census, that kind of thing. And wherever you are, which geography you are, and which industry sector you are, there must be regulations that are applicable to you. And that is a barrier very often for automation processes, because it puts a barrier up for going into the cloud. It puts a barrier up of getting external aid. It puts a barrier up for BPOs in the sense that they cannot take over or help some of their customers with their use cases. And so this is something, of course, we have been facing from day one. And because interesting enough, we thought we're going to this business 2016, get some very easy topics with, no data protection issues with it. And the first we saw faced with was healthcare, was insurance, was health insurance even, where you can imagine that is really data that needs protecting and needs to be specially handled. And this is again where Collective Intelligence, the approach can help quite a bit and can take some barriers down. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about some of those techniques and tools that are part of Collective Intelligence solutions to bring it actually a little bit to life of how does it actually work. Now, one of the main topics when it comes to Collective Intelligence is that it relies on microtasking. So meaning that it takes apart a complex job. So think about you have a census document or you have a prescription. So you're taking it down in a way that, first of all, it allows you to have many workers work on it in parallel. So that's the first goal that you have, because you want to bring the power of those 2.3 million people into it to actually work on it in parallel and maybe work in sequences. And so we're breaking it down. So within minutes, people are able to grasp what it is about. And also then, of course, as I said, spread it out and consolidate again to bring the complete data set back. And to do that, some of the tools and techniques also aid compliance. And the first one I would like to mention is snippeting. So you may have heard about that. Snippeting means breaking down the textual part of a document into snippets. Yeah, really, there's just maybe a word, maybe a line that a person is being exposed to that captures it, that corrects that data. By ripping those document apart into snippets, you're taking it out of context. And in many and in most cases, this satisfies data protection officers, because out of context means no longer protectable data. As long, of course, as you have the overall infrastructure around it that makes sure the snippets thereafter are handled in the most secure way. So snippeting is really something that is always there in a Collective Intelligence solution, because it just really helps both data protection and parallel working in a sense. Sometimes it's not enough though. So when you have a recognizable number, maybe an IBAN number in Europe, or you have other recognizable patterns within a word, within a number, then maybe scrambling or similar techniques will be applied to ensure that the data is being still validated and captured and made clean. But at the same time, even if you look at that IBAN number, you look at a social security number, it's so out of context and so out of order that again, you will not be able to put it back together again. Of course, when you talk about snippets and scrambling, you also ensure that a crowd worker will only ever see one snippet of a document, one scrambled part of a document, and not much more information, so that if they have that kind of intelligence and they remember maybe a handwriting, they can put the pieces together. So it's all taken care of in that way via the AI part of the collective intelligence. The AI part comes into play a lot more also when you go beyond text recognition and text validation. And when you talk about classification kind of work, or any more complex work on documents where you may have to expose more of a document than just a snippet. And here tools such as anonymization, AI based of course, would help to do that. So you have a matter of taking apart a complex job, anonymize in a very sophisticated way and a very secure way data to expose to a crowd worker to do the task, to thereafter then carry on with the work. For example, take for example the area of invoice processing. So many organizations have already automation technologies for their invoices. Many are at the moment going into the second or third generation of those. But they still have a challenge that if they are in an industry, maybe logistics, for example, where you have hundreds and thousands of suppliers and very many layouts, because potentially every driver for you use a different layout to provide to you, you have a challenge getting to train your technology. You may even work with layout-based systems. So how can collective intelligence help with that? With this combination of anonymization, therefore then helping to recognize, for example, a supplier, then using the snippeting, using the scrambling to get the data right, put it all back together, feed it back to the automation technology that is in-house to make it more efficient and get that automation rate up higher and higher and higher. Now, the other part of ensuring compliance, or the last part I want to talk about ensuring compliance, is the different kind of crowds. So far we talked about 2.3 million people, and that number is primarily related to what we call the public crowd. So these are people globally working in crowdsourcing, being linked to us. But we also have other ways of working. And for example, the internal crowd of our customers plays an important part. For example, when it comes to business continuity challenges. We have an example of a blog on our website where during the pandemic, one of our health insurance customers had a challenge to bring together their resources in the home offices and they were not allowed because of compliance topics to actually expose documents to those people. So they engaged us and used the portal to actually help them with the tools that we provided to get their people, it was over 500 people working on that, together and pool that resource. But it also is a good example when you talk about different kind of crowds of how we work with our BPO partners and customers. The BPOs are benefiting on the one hand by having access to the crowd, these 2.3 million people, so they can actually scale up and down to secure their own SLAs. On the other hand, they can bring in their own talent to actually provide specialist work for any other customer or BPO. So we have a growing network out there, a global network with some very interesting organizations with high specialism that can help to bridge the last bit of compliance when it's needed, and of course bring that specialist skill into it as well. So this is just some examples of the tools and techniques applied in collective intelligence, next to maybe some of you would more know as well in the AI part, of course, applying different type of technology to support all that and to manage the crowd. The crowd is a swarm at the end of the day, and it needs special handling. And this is something that the collective intelligence ensures and it makes it compliant so that it actually supports our customers in the most efficient way. So before we come into the Q&A part of our session today, I would like to summarize really what we talked about today and maybe mention one or two more examples. So I hope that we've been able to explain to you the concept of CI and how it can relieve some of the potential automation and solution nightmares. When it comes to achieving ROI and cost reduction, collective intelligence can help by, for example, taking this time out of training your own AI systems and making that data training set clean and speed up. At the same time, having the access to a global workforce of workers. In many cases, if you're in a Western Europe environment, for example, you will also achieve direct cost reductions, but a pure scale of it. So we're passing that scale advantage on, or any of organizations who offer collective intelligence will pass a scale advantage on, which also ensures that you will have a cost advantage. The SLA fear can be alleviated because you will get guarantees of quality and of time. And in the majority of our cases, we will increase SLAs. So we have seen in some examples that you will also read upon in our use cases on our website and our YouTube channel. We have a nice video about some of these as well. We've been able to increase, for example, time SLA from weeks down to hours for some of our customers. We are able to increase the quality because the approach of having this micro-tasking part is ensuring that the quality can in many cases even be increased rather than having just being on a par. I hope I explained to you a little bit recently in the last slides the compliancy part of it. So the whole techniques of making the data exposure secure is something that ensures compliance, and the overall end-to-end experience a customer will have of dealing with us. Make sure there's really high security behind it to ensure data is not exposed, cannot be tackled in a way that it shouldn't be. And Peter mentioned 1,000 people in 10 minutes. So unlimited, almost unlimited scale. If you call 2.3 million people unlimited, very high scale, instantly, and very agile, coming and going as it's needed, as the business continuity requires it, as your volume peaks require it, and as we all said, overall in the guarantee of an SLA time as well. So something that collective intelligence can provide in the scope of automation solutions and automation projects to eliminate some barriers and hopefully to tackle some of the fears that are associated with it, to be behind as an extended workforce, an extended tool that actually can help when things don't go in the direction they should do, or are too slow, or are suddenly unexpected. It is something that can be set up to help eliminate those document and data automation fears and barriers. So I thank you already very much for your attention, and would like to hand over back to Annie to hopefully answer some of the questions that came in.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, now we'll have a look at some of the questions that were raised during the presentation. While we do so, I'm going to leave Susanna and Peter's contact information up. You can reach out to either Suzanne or Peter directly for more information, including a copy of a very compelling white paper from the research group Deep Analysis. So let me see, we got a few good questions here. Okay. So one question was, does this collective intelligence approach compete with BPOs?
I would say it does not. We get that question off and on, and really what we're doing is augmenting the BPO processes, so adding to their workforce, and giving them, as we talked about in the presentation, the up and down, let's call it, workforce capabilities to have availability to do processing immediately or not immediately if they need to scale back. So, we often see BPOs saying, well, there's particular engagements I don't really think we can take because we don't have the workforce to accept that. So they don't even bid on projects. With this in their pocket, with collective intelligence and crowdsourcing capabilities in their pocket, they can now go after new engagements and use our technology as a support. So just to be clear, not at all a competitor to BPOs.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was another one. Is this approach suitable for handwritten documents?
Yeah, maybe I can take that. Very much so. So this is one of the sweet spots, as you can imagine. So those of you who are currently in automation projects, you see there's really rapid advances being made in handwriting recognition. So that's the last big hurdle to go over, and the technologies are improving a lot. But nevertheless, when it comes to cursive handwriting, or you have forms which are maybe written in a stressful situation, such as maybe a claims form if you had a car accident. So not many people use the apps nowadays. I mean, you have apps, you can take pictures, you can type in, but you still find that even the young generation still reverts back to paper, and your hands will be shaking at that point. So the quality will still not be as good as you would hope it to be for the technology. So that is especially where of course, collective intelligence and the crowdsourcing element can help. And it can also help to feed then again those, if you are using AI-based recognition technologies, to feed back again and help it to learn. So very much so, a perfect use case.
Okay, great. Thank you, Susanna. I think we have time for one more. Let's see. Are crowd workers paid adequately?
Yeah, very good question. Also one we hear a lot. There have been some nightmare scenarios in the past, but we talked about some years ago where crowdsourcing had a very bad name, and people often don't know what crowdsourcing is about. So that is one area that we take a lot of time and focus on. So we ensure wherever our crowd workers are based that they will be paid above their minimum wage applicable, and they have a very good earning potential. And that goes with a lot of complexity. So we heard about snippeting, we heard about some of these aspects, and it seemed very simple on the surface, right? So you think you're taking a document apart, you're shipping it out to many people. I know Amazon Mechanical Turk or whatever, but it's everything around it to make it compliant, to make it secure, and pay is one of those aspects. So it cannot be that someone makes a good job and doesn't get paid for it, or it doesn't get paid adequately for the job in his wherever his geographical region is. We go even further than that. We have an interactive portal. So we're actually interacting with our crowd workers a lot, so they can actually provide feedback in, and they also get feedback from us in the sense of how good is their work, how suitable they are for certain things. They can increase their skills, and therefore they become also more and more responsible workers and take on different tasks, which then provide them with even better remuneration opportunities.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Susanna. It looks like we can end the presentation there. I think that concludes everything that we wanted to show. Thanks very much for joining us today. And please remember to contact Peter or Susanna for your free white paper. And stay tuned for upcoming webinars in this series on collective intelligence. Thank you.